Borderlands 1 is better than Borderlands 3. Now, why is that, you may ask? Well, I'm going to get into my reasons why, but first it should be said that your favorite movie, game, book, TV show, whatever the case may be, is different from millions of other people. An opinion can't be wrong. Therefore, if you disagree with the title of this video, I suggest that you just sit tight until the end and then let your thoughts be heard down in the comments below of why you disagree. With that being said, why do I believe that a game from 2009 is better than one that came out an entire decade later? In the first game, I enjoy playing the game. What do I mean when I say this? Well, a lot of the cutscenes, pretty much all of them, are skippable after the first playthrough, and a majority of the dialogue is given to you when you're running around. And yes, I know that the PC versions of Borderlands 3 can get a downloadable cutscene skip that somebody has made. So I want to speak to the broader community in terms of these types of conversations. And Borderlands 3 does far too much babysitting for me. The amount of time spent just listening to someone talk before you have to go and walk over and listen to someone else talk is just infuriating. At least in Borderlands 1, you can at least start heading to your checkpoint while they ramble on. The next biggest one for me is the difficulty. The raw gameplay and hardness of how the game scales up as you go through is so much more satisfying than that of the third game, and where you just end up blasting through most of the enemies without even breaking a sweat. Badasses and boss encounters actually feel important and rewarding to take down in Borderlands 1, as to where there are just other enemies with slightly higher health values in the most recent games. This is even the case with a lot of the quote-unquote 17 raid bosses in the game. We all know Cromarax is a better designed fight than anything BL3 has to offer, which is another reason I prefer the first game, because it actually feels good to work up a new character and eventually be able to defeat the big bad. As to where Borderlands 3, you have to worry about getting a certain anointment, making sure that you have the right amount of iridium, and hey, maybe a barrel or another part on your gun. For Cromarax, I just hit a lever, ride the elevator up, and I'm in the fight. He's fairly difficult while still having a glass ceiling that once you break through, you'll be able to defeat him without using the ledge, and fast if you get good at it. And the easy fights of the late game in BL3 don't even hold a candle to Craw, in my opinion. While I think there are some better raid bosses in Borderlands 2, Cromarax by an entire football field and a half clears the couple of raid bosses that are over in the third game. The farming. Now, this one is a point of discussion because in the later game of Borderlands 1, you will start to see more legendary gear, as to where your first 20 levels, you will not see any legendary gear. Which makes sense, right?
I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies. That's simply it.
The further you go, the more chances and odds of better gear. Well, the third game decides to just take that and just shit all over it. Legendary gear flying off the handle every 15 seconds. But for whatever reason, it seems like there's less world drops and shit at the end game. The place where it actually would make a bit of sense to have them. It's just completely backwards, and it makes the early game way too boring because of how simple it is, and the late game drags because the parts that are ruined by an over-diluted system because the parts are just way too overdone. You have the anointments basically becoming the new grip, and no further reward for players that do want to grind. Because yeah, the perfect god rolls can be a hefty farm in Borderlands 3, but pearls are still rare, hybrids are still far more uncommon. In the third game being more fit for the casual experience, it doesn't propel you to get the better gear, because most of the gear, whether it's perfect or not, can mop the entire game. And while I understand this was to negate a big complaint of the meta in previous games, I think that it just ended up making the game boring, because the farming was ruined. And when a game's replay value is tied to the grinding and farming aspects of it, making that less enjoyable was just a huge misstep in my eyes. and I'll say that until the day that I die. The weapons and gunplay. To make this one brief because it's very, very subjective, the guns are just way better in the first game for me. I love how they sound, the way they bounce, the way they look, literally everything about them. Borderlands 3, I feel like I'm looking at Destiny. A lot of the guns and items are just a carbon copy of guns that we've already seen in other games, and hell, even guns that are in the same game because, power creep is a big issue in Borderlands 3 as well. And you can even tie this to the skills, builds, and abilities in the game as well. And the first game does have very simple skill trees, I have to admit, but at least it isn't just a knockoff of stuff that we've already seen. And all of this goes back to human nature. It isn't just how new something is or how shiny it looks. It's about how that piece of media made you feel, the memories that you have connected to it. And if you think Borderlands 3 is a better game, that's fine. But for me, the wasteland, non-babysitting, weird and wacky world of Borderlands 1 just does something different for me, which is exactly why I made this video talking more in depth on my thoughts on Borderlands 1. But why did I make this video? Well, by all means, you can disagree. You may come to a Borderlands game for something completely different than I do, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But that also doesn't make me incorrect for saying that the first game is better than the third. It's like saying that someone is wrong because they don't think that the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street is better than the original. Which, yeah, I'm standing in the original boat there as well, but you get my point. Just because it's older, more dated, and blah blah blah, that doesn't mean that there isn't an audience for it. There are still people who collect games on the Atari, the original Nintendo, and so on. Now let's say that you don't collect. Does that make them an idiot for liking something that you don't? No, and it also doesn't make them wrong either. If that's what they enjoy, let them enjoy it. There are people who do hard drugs in their free time. We just want to play the games that we like. My point is, just because you disagree doesn't make either of you more right than the other person. I really did this video to show how one person's perspective, in my case, myself, can differ and also potentially agree with others today. But it's these games that brought us all here today, to this video. And after all these years without a new game, that's pretty damn cool. So whether you agree or not, I appreciate you all for watching this video till the end. Please smash a like on it if you did enjoy it, and subscribe if you guys are new. I love you all to death. I want you to take it easy out there. Stay safe. And with that, I will see you all in the next one.